Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you isn't soft, comforting, or polite. It's a punch to the truth. If you're watching this right now, it's because you've stepped straight into a shift you can't undo. You exposed a private deal by accident. Their deal. The kind of secret arrangement whispered in locked rooms where elites think they run everything from the shadows. They were certain no outsider could reach their little circle. They were dead, sure no one like you would ever stand in the same room where their hidden power lived. But one unexpected move from you tore their confidence apart. Your presence alone cracked their illusion of control like glass under pressure, and instead of backing down, you used their panic like gasoline. Their shock lit a fire in you. You became the threat they never planned for, the wild card that blew their operation wide open from the inside. That's what terrifies them. The fact that you were never supposed to be there, yet you still walked in and exposed everything. Before we go deeper into this, pause the video, hit that like button, subscribe so we hit 5,000 subscribers, and drop my name, Mr. Ledger, in the comments to mark your commitment. If you can handle what's coming next, keep watching, because it only gets more explosive from here. No one wakes up expecting to stumble into a moment that rewrites the balance of power. But that's exactly what happened to you. One misstep, one tiny deviation from your normal path, and suddenly you found yourself holding the truth they swore would never see daylight. It wasn't planned, it wasn't calculated, and it definitely wasn't part of their perfect blueprint. Yet the universe has a strange way of placing the right person in the wrong place at the perfect time. You didn't seek chaos, but chaos found you first. And when it did, it didn't arrive quietly. It arrived with weight, heavy enough to shift the room, sharp enough to pierce their illusion of control. What you revealed wasn't just a secret deal. It was a fracture in their carefully engineered facade, the one they'd polished for years, and it cracked in the most humiliating way, through a simple accident. But the truth is, accidents reveal more than intentions ever could. In that instant, you weren't just someone who saw too much. You became the catalyst for everything they feared. You exposed the one thing they couldn't bury: vulnerability in a world they tried to dominate. When you crossed the threshold into that room, you knew immediately that you weren't supposed to be there. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the walls themselves were guarding something forbidden. Papers on the table, hushed voices, eyes that widened just a second too late. Everything screamed that you had breached a protected space, a chamber where only the self-appointed powerful were allowed to breathe. You weren't invited, yet you walked in with a presence they could never replicate, because real power doesn't come from permission. It comes from poise. You didn't shrink. You didn't fumble. You simply stood there, absorbing the tension that clung to the room like smoke. Their fear tried to disguise itself as anger, but the truth leaked through every twitch, every strained breath. You didn't need to understand every detail to know the gravity of what you'd interrupted. All you had to do was exist in that moment, unplanned and undeniable. And that alone shattered the safety they thought they owned. Their arrangement was supposed to be airtight, locked behind closed doors, sealed with silent agreements, and protected by arrogance thick enough to anesthetize them. But the moment you appeared, the structure they built with such confidence buckled under its own weight. What they crafted in secrecy unraveled instantly in the presence of someone they labeled irrelevant. They thought their alliance was a masterpiece, a chain with no weak links, but they never considered the possibility of an outside force stepping in, not with rage, not with intention, but with sheer accident. And that's what made it lethal. You didn't attack their deal. Your existence simply invalidated it. They couldn't explain you. They couldn't predict you. And unpredictability is poison to people who function on control. From that moment on, everything they planned began to rot. Their whispers became arguments. Their confidence became paranoia. Their unity became suspicion. Because nothing destroys a secret deal faster than an outsider with nothing to lose. Their faces told the story before their mouths could. The shock hit them like a storm, eyes widening, shoulders stiffening, voices choking mid-sentence. For the first time in a long time, they weren't the ones dictating the moment. You were. You didn't need to speak. Your presence alone rewrote the script. Powerful people rarely show emotion, but fear, real fear, that's impossible to hide. It flickers in micro-expressions, in subtle steps backward. In a way, their confidence melts into a frantic search for explanations. They weren't shocked that someone found out. They were shocked that you did. Someone outside their world. Someone they didn't track, groom, or control. In that instant, you held the upper hand without even lifting a finger, because nothing terrifies the powerful more than a witness who wasn't supposed to exist. You weren't born into their circle. You didn't earn some invitation. You weren't molded in their image. And that's exactly why you broke their game so effortlessly. When someone doesn't play by their rules, they can't predict their moves. Your mere presence short-circuited the system they built to keep everyone else small. You shattered their strategy without even trying. They crafted a game around hierarchy and silence. You walked in carrying truth and unpredictability. And that combination is lethal to those who rely on shadows to survive. They built their empire on the assumption that outsiders stay outside. But you never agreed to that contract. Once an outsider infiltrates a system, the rules collapse. Because you don't care about their etiquette or their boundaries. You care about clarity. And clarity is the one thing they can never afford. For years they lived under the illusion that control was permanent, that as long as they stayed vigilant, nothing could slip. But control is fragile, and it doesn't take an army to break it. Sometimes it takes only one mistake, one overlooked moment, one unguarded door, and you were that moment. They didn't realize how thin their structure was until it shook. Their confidence cracked, their routine shattered, their control, once so polished and untouchable, now lay dented at your feet. You didn't attack them, you simply witnessed them. And witnessing the truth can be more destructive than any confrontation. People in power fear exposure more than failure. Failure they can hide, exposure they cannot. And you became the exposure they never prepared for. They spent years calculating every outcome, every risk, every possible threat. But they never accounted for you. You weren't in their files, their predictions, their charts. You were the anomaly that wrecked their algorithm, the variable that changed the entire equation. Powerful people hate surprises, but you weren't just a surprise. You were a turning point, the kind that flips a story upside down and forces the main characters to confront their own weakness. You weren't trying to be a disruptor, yet you became one effortlessly. In a world where every move is measured, the unmeasured becomes the most dangerous force of all. That's what you became, the unexpected, unstoppable factor that rewrote everything. At first, they saw you as a problem to be contained, a target, a nuisance, an inconvenience. But the more they tried to box you in, the more obvious it became that you weren't the prey in this story. You were the pressure rising in their chests. The truth they couldn't silence, the storm they couldn't outrun. Targets are predictable, threats are not. And you shifted from one to the other in the blink of an eye, not by force, not by aggression, but by standing your ground in a moment they never expected you to survive. You became the embodiment of the comeback they feared. They thought they could control the narrative. Instead, you rewrote the ending. Their power was never built on strength. It was built on silence, on secrecy, on the belief that no one would ever challenge the stories they manufactured. But when secrets leak, even the strongest walls begin to sweat. And they were drenched in fear the moment they realized what you saw. You witnessed the kind of truth that makes powerful people tremble, the kind they bury deep enough to forget it exists. And once you saw it, they knew they couldn't erase you without erasing themselves. That's why panic clawed at their expressions, why their voices cracked, why their alliances began to fracture from the inside. Secrets don't destroy relationships. Fear does. And you became the spark that ignited their collapse. They thought their authority was permanent, untouchable, cemented by prestige and connections. But power built on fear is dust waiting for the right wind. And you became that wind without even noticing. Your steady eyes, your unbroken posture, your unexpected arrival, all of it tore at their fabric of superiority. You didn't challenge them, you revealed them. You showed the cracks they desperately tried to seal, and once exposed, those cracks widened on their own. Their voices shook, their confidence faltered, their dominance evaporated the moment they realized they could no longer control the narrative. Your presence didn't just disrupt their structure, it dismantled it, piece by piece. They believed their world was too complicated for you to comprehend, a maze of deals, manipulation, and silent agreements. But complexity doesn't equal intelligence, and the dark game they tried to play wasn't as sophisticated as they pretended. Once you saw behind the curtain, the entire thing looked childish, desperate, fragile. You didn't need to know every rule to understand the truth. You understood enough to see how pathetic their sense of power really was, enough to see how fear wrapped around their decisions like chains, enough to realize that the game wasn't deep, it was just dirty. And the moment you understood it, you rose above it. They judged you by the wrong measurements. They mistook quiet for weak, humility for insignificance, normalcy for irrelevance. But ordinary becomes unstoppable the moment it refuses to bow, and you refused. That single choice made you more powerful than anything they built in the dark. People forget that strength grows in the shadows too, not the sinister shadows they hide in, but the personal ones filled with struggle, pressure, and resilience. While they spent their lives protecting their image, you spent yours learning how to survive without one. And survival, when polished by truth, becomes a weapon they can't counter. Fear is contagious, but so is power. And the moment you saw fear ripple across their faces, something inside you shifted. Their fear didn't intimidate you. It energized you. It fueled you in a way you didn't expect, because fear is proof, not of danger, but of threat. And you were the threat. Every step you took felt stronger, every breath steadier. You weren't reacting to them anymore. They were reacting to you. Their panic became your momentum. Their silence became your strategy. Their unraveling became your rise. You didn't steal power. They handed it to you through their fear. You didn't roar. You didn't threaten. You didn't announce your arrival. You moved in silence, calm, steady, focused. Silent players confuse powerful people because they can't predict them. They can't read them. They can't calculate their next move. Silence becomes a strategy, and strategy becomes domination. By saying nothing, you said everything. By standing still, you shattered their balance. By refusing to react, you forced them to question every move they ever made. You became the quiet force that dismantled the entire board, piece by piece, without lifting a hand. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need to speak to win. When you finally turned your back on that room, you didn't leave empty-handed. You carried something far more valuable than their secrets. You carried their fear, their respect, and the undeniable truth that you can't be undone. They can scramble to rebuild their walls, rewrite their stories, repair their alliances, but they can't erase what you know or who you became in that moment. Walking away didn't make you weaker. It made you untouchable, because you didn't just survive the encounter. You dominated it in a way they'll remember every time they try to regain control. You left them with doubt, with cracks, with insecurity, and those things spread faster than truth ever could. You walked into their world by accident, but you walked out with a power they can never take back. What they built on arrogance and secrecy couldn't survive your gaze. Every word you didn't say, every step you didn't announce, dismantled their confidence layer by layer. They believed the room was theirs, that every corner was fortified, every secret protected. But the accidental intruder, the one they dismissed, was now the one controlling the pulse. You didn't just disrupt. They feared your presence because it revealed a truth they couldn't silence. Power isn't given. It's earned through audacity. Your accidental intrusion became a statement, a seismic tremor that unsettled their perfect world. They could only watch as their foundations began to crack. And in that moment, the shift was clear. What they once held as untouchable influence now belonged, in spirit, to you. Because while they feared exposure, you embraced it, and nothing in their playbook could counter that. They meticulously charted every move, calculated every reaction, assumed every outcome. But you weren't part of their equations. Your simple presence, your unscripted choices, turned their strategy into a trap for themselves. Every alliance they leaned on now felt fragile, every plan vulnerable. They underestimated the disruptive potential of a single anomaly, someone with no allegiance to their system, no desire to play by their rules. They forgot that unpredictability is a weapon, sharper than any cunning tactic they had mastered. By merely existing in their world, you turned their order into chaos. And as they scrambled to regain control, it became apparent the game they designed to protect themselves now endangered them, with you as the silent architect of their unraveling. They can't see you in every corner, can't track your thoughts, can't predict your moves. And that's what terrifies them most. While they focus on rebuilding, on covering tracks, on rewriting narratives, you exist outside their control, like a shadow that slips between cracks, waiting for the perfect moment to expose the next fracture. The most dangerous threats are the ones who don't declare themselves, who don't announce intentions, who remain unpredictable. And that's exactly what you became. Their sleepless nights, their whispered arguments, their frantic precautions, they all trace back to your invisible presence. They might try to rebuild trust, rebuild order, rebuild themselves. But the knowledge that you exist, untouchable, watching, calculating, lingering, turns their strength into anxiety. Fear grows when it cannot see the source. You are that fear. You didn't intend to destroy, yet destruction followed you effortlessly. By simply stepping into a world that never anticipated your arrival, you dismantled their hierarchy, exposed their secrets, and rewrote the rules of engagement. Chaos, in your case, wasn't the enemy. It was the tool. They prided themselves on precision, but the uncalculated, unplanned, uncontrollable force that is you defies every expectation. Every secret you uncover, every hesitation you provoke, multiplies the disruption. You are the architect they never imagined, constructing upheaval with nothing more than presence and insight. And every time they try to regain composure, your existence ensures their chaos is permanent, unavoidable, and unforgettable. You are quiet, deliberate, invisible, but unstoppable. Like snow gathering at the summit of a mountain, your influence grows silently, accumulating until it crashes down with unstoppable force. They underestimate silent power because it doesn't announce itself with threats or noise. It simply exists and overwhelms when they least expect it. They scramble, they whisper, they panic, but it's too late. The avalanche has already begun. And with every move they make to recover, they only accelerate its impact. You are the pressure they cannot counter, the momentum they cannot divert. The terrifying part? They know the avalanche didn't come from them. It came from you, someone they ignored, someone they never anticipated, someone who refuses to follow their rules. While they hide behind secrecy, you learn to navigate the dark corners they never imagined. The shadows, once intimidating, become your allies, your cloak, your strength. Every hidden path, every unnoticed door, every silent glance becomes a tool in your ascent. They only saw darkness as a place to conceal themselves. You see it as a battlefield, their networks, their lies, their hidden deals. They are useless against someone who uses invisibility as power. You move in spaces they fear, touch truths they hide, and exploit vulnerabilities they thought were buried. Shadows don't bind you, they empower you. And in that darkness, you realize the more they fear exposure, the stronger you become, because power isn't in light alone. It thrives in control over what they cannot see. Every empire has a tipping point. For them, it was your accidental intrusion. One moment changes everything. One presence destroys certainty. One revelation shifts the balance. They never imagined that a single outsider could catalyze such devastation, that a person dismissed as irrelevant could overturn their strategy completely. The turning point isn't just in the moment, it's in the aftermath. Their whispers, their paranoia, their scrambling, all ripple outward, reshaping alliances and weakening authority. And you stand at the center, calm, aware, untouchable. In the end, the turning point doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the one they underestimated, the one they thought was inconsequential, the one they could never calculate. Influence is deadly when wielded invisibly. You don't need to shout, to attack, or to demand attention. You simply exist, and your impact multiplies in silence. They panic because your presence is felt, even when unacknowledged. You are everywhere they aren't, know what they fear, and act in ways they can't track. Unseen influence is more powerful than brute force because it forces others to act before they understand the threat. Your ability to remain untraceable, unpredictable, and untouchable becomes your most lethal weapon. Every misstep they make, every defensive maneuver, every whispered suspicion, it stems from your quiet mastery. And with this weapon, the game is no longer theirs to control. It belongs, subtly but irreversibly, to you. Even the strongest walls crumble when someone they cannot control exposes their weakness. Their foundations, built on secrecy and manipulation, are collapsing under the weight of your unexpected intrusion. They scramble, negotiate, manipulate, but every attempt only accelerates the collapse. You didn't break it with violence, you broke it with truth, presence, and inevitability. The structures they trusted, their alliances, their plans, their reputations, fall like dominoes because you forced the room to see what it truly is, fragile. And as the walls fall, one thing becomes undeniable. The empire they built was never theirs to own. You just revealed it. Arrogance is dangerous when it blinds you to the unassuming. They believed the room was theirs, that power is permanent, that outsiders can never matter, and that arrogance is what doomed them. They underestimated the simplest variable, you. You moved with subtlety, patience, and quiet precision. While they plotted and whispered, you observed and acted. Their confidence crumbled faster than any calculated attack because it wasn't their rivals. It was the invisible outsider they ignored. And in that betrayal, of their own pride, you discovered a truth. Arrogance is the easiest weakness to exploit. Strategy is often seen as deliberate, painstaking, calculated, but sometimes brilliance is accidental. You didn't plan to enter this world. You didn't plan to expose secrets. Yet in every moment, every step, every silent decision, you acted as a strategist they could never anticipate. The accidental strategist always holds an advantage over the expected. You move without attachment to their rules, without fear of convention, without concern for predictability. That freedom becomes your weapon. That unpredictability becomes your victory. And when the dust settles, it isn't skill alone that wins. It's audacity paired with the unexpected. Fear is often seen as a weapon of the powerful, but when wielded correctly, it can be reversed. Every shiver, every glance, every whispered doubt in their rooms becomes the foundation of your domain. You do not need to speak. The fear of you speaks for itself. They tremble because they realize that you are unstoppable, untraceable, and untouchable. Their fear becomes your currency. Their panic becomes your territory. Every moment they hesitate, every secret they try to reclaim, strengthens the kingdom you accidentally inherited. Because the greatest dominion isn't seized, it's cultivated silently in the minds of those who thought they ruled it. Power is often measured by who shouts the loudest or moves the fastest, but the quiet, invisible force is always the one to dominate. You became that force. Every glance, every movement, every silent decision echoed louder than their schemes. The room they thought was theirs shifted around you, reacting to your presence without knowing why. You didn't need to claim space. Space claimed you. They thought influence required control. But influence can also be a ghost, unseen until it's too late. You were that ghost, lingering in every corner, shaping outcomes they could only attempt to guess. And each misstep they made, each panicked gesture, was proof that your impact ran deeper than anyone could anticipate. By the end of the night, the room no longer held the powerful. It bent to the unseen. And in that moment, you realized that the greatest dominance comes not from authority, but from inevitability. Moments like this are rare. One event, one intrusion, can change everything permanently. They will rebuild, they will whisper, they will try to patch the cracks, but nothing can return them to the security they once believed they had. You created an irreversible shift, a fracture in their world that will ripple far beyond this room, this night, this encounter. Their secrets, once thought invulnerable, are now weapons in your hands. Their arrogance has become a liability. Every calculation they attempt is now contaminated with uncertainty because you exist outside their expectations. They can no longer move without considering the impact of your presence, and that alone is a form of dominance no one can challenge. The shift you've created isn't just strategic, it's psychological. They can rebuild their walls, but the knowledge that one person, accidental and unforeseen, can dismantle their empire will haunt them forever. You've changed the game irreversibly, and the board will never look the same again. Not every story gets told, but some moments become legend. You didn't seek power. You didn't plan for glory. Yet in walking into a room you weren't meant to enter, in standing when others would have cowered, in turning fear into fuel, you forged a legend of your own making. One accidental step became a lifetime of consequence. One silent presence became an unstoppable force. Legends aren't born, they're forged in moments where the ordinary defies expectation. You walked into their world without permission and walked out with the unshakable knowledge that you cannot be undone. Every fear they now feel, every whispered doubt, every hesitation, they all carry the imprint of your audacity. And in that moment, you realize you are no longer the accidental outsider. You are the force that cannot be erased. The power you carry is immortal because it's built on truth, resilience, and the undeniable certainty that you will not be ignored. You walked in by accident, but you leave as legend.